Thank you very much for joining us today. This is an important topic of ethics of artificial intelligence in healthcare. As you know, artificial intelligence is going to become more and more prevalent in medical practice, and we really have to take the time and spend the effort to really understand and examine the ethical issues that are involved. So my approach today will be to start from some fundamental principles of ethics and build up to what is our current understanding of the ethical challenges and perhaps potential benefits of AI in healthcare. And hopefully by the end of this lecture, you'll have a clear grasp of the key ethical issues that surround AI in medical delivery of healthcare systems. We have to take a look at some of the pioneers in science and healthcare and really understand how they felt about artificial intelligence. Stephen Hawking, we all know who he is. And he actually wrote that success in creating AI would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last, unless we learn how to avoid the risks. And he also wrote, humans, limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded by AI. Elon Musk also has spoken about artificial intelligence, and he believes that artificial intelligence is our greatest existential threat. He said, I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight, maybe at the national and international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish. And when he was talking about Google's DeepMind project, he said, I think there is potentially a dangerous outcome there. So these are people that we know well who have thought about this or are actually directly involved in the development of AI, and they are signaling that there should be reason for concern. Here's Bill Gates. He said, I am in the camp that's concerned about superintelligence. First, the machines will do a lot of jobs for us and not be super intelligent. In fact, that's the stage that we're at. That should be very positive if we manage it well. A few decades after that, though, the intelligence is strong enough to be a concern. I agree with Elon Musk and some of the others on this and don't understand why some people are not concerned. So here are luminaries in the field of artificial intelligence, and they're all telling us the same thing. We should be concerned. And actually, if we take a look at historically, what has happened over the history of mankind, we actually are living in a very special time in human history. Never before have we witnessed such advancements of our human species in the history of mankind. We look at this graph. It took until the 1400s to develop the printing press, so to make information a bit more widely available to those who could even read. Then it took another couple hundred years before we had the technology of the telescope to view other planets and stars. And then another 100 years after that, where we could travel efficiently across our country with locomotives and steam engines. And then starting in the 1800s, we started to see technological advances accelerate. We had the telegraph, the light bulb, and now we have machines that will fly in the air. We call them airplanes. We can communicate around the world instantaneously. We carry computers in our pockets that are called iPhones. And so we have seen such a tremendous explosion of technological advances in the last decade or two that's unparalleled in human history. And no one has before had seen the changes that you have seen, and it's nothing compared to the changes that are on their way. So we have to be very, very cognizant of that. So the take-home message is, well, the experts are concerned. I'm not an expert in AI, but if the experts are concerned, that perhaps maybe I should be concerned. So what we need to do is collectively, as a society, as individuals, we need to proceed with caution. We need to understand what the potential risks are of advancing AI. We have to give thoughtful consideration to how we control it, how humans can continue to have control over artificial intelligence, and to be sure that there is responsible development. We have other countries around the world that have different values than we do, and we'll talk about that. And North Korea, China, they can develop AI just as well as we can. and to what use will they put it, right? So we have to stay informed. We have to stay vigilant, not only as doctors, but as citizens, to see what is coming down the road and to make sure that we do something about it. So what is artificial intelligence, right? We've heard a number of talks about artificial intelligence. Basically, it is a computer or a machine that will take data, large amounts of data, and then give us some output, some sort of results. They can adapt their programming to the input that they get. They can simulate human intelligence. They can make decisions. They can have perception, perhaps reasoning, and even decision-making capability. And in healthcare, they will analyze our medical, as we saw with radiology, analyze our medical information and give us answers that it would take lifetimes for us to kind of figure out, or they can see something that is so subtle that only large amounts of data can actually detect. They can actually develop personalized treatment plans, as you could see. Copilot took the information that was given it and developed a personalized treatment plan for this particular hypothetical patient. And also we have the ability to monitor patients in real time. We have people in my department that are working on feedback systems. So if they see the heart rate go up and the blood pressure go down, they can make suggestions as to how to correct it, whether it needs to be with fluid or with inotropes or some other kind of drug. These are all being developed, and we will have the capability in the next couple of years to do all of that. But the question will become, can AI act responsibly and behave ethically? And that is going to be the big question, because when we are relying upon AI to make decisions for us, we're going to have to make sure that it understands our value system, understands what we consider ethical rather than expedient or the most efficient way to do things. And, you know, as Mary had mentioned, 2001, A Space Odyssey, right? That was the whole issue, that actually AI had decided that human beings were expendable, that they weren't smart enough. And so that was certainly thought of many, many years ago. So that is our challenge today. Now, when we talk about AI, we've seen AI from a number of different perspectives, right? There's many different things. There's MPI, there's language processing, there's other kinds of models where they take large amounts of data and they use it in different ways. But we have, on a broader scale, we're talking about really two different kinds of AI, right? Narrow AI is where AI is designed to do a specific task. So the one that Sandy demonstrated was they're designed to actually write an H&P or a SOAP note. When it was first brought out, and the famous match between Kasparov and Deep Blue, that AI was designed just to figure out all the different permutations of a move in chess and ended up winning against the world champion, right? Or where they programmed Watson to compete on Jeopardy. It took all the information that it knew and was able to produce answers, right? But that's narrow AI, right? They're there for a specific task. In radiology, to spot that little dot on the chest X-ray that we probably wouldn't see unless we had a tremendous amount of experience. But the danger actually is in broad AI. This is also known as artificial general intelligence, where they can actually perform human-like tasks, right? Use judgment, make decisions that are based upon value systems and as well as information. And then there is artificial consciousness, which is a subset of AGI, but it is where they are essentially have a degree of consciousness. And this is what these Elon Musk and Bill Gates are worried about. It's not narrow AI where, you know, we can figure out what, you know, a brain tumor, or we can figure out a spot on a lung, or we can beat the chess champion. No, we're not worried about that. We're worried about how. We're worried about a artificial general intelligence that actually has a degree of consciousness that can make decisions based upon value systems, right? So we have to be very, very careful about that, and try to decide how to imbue artificial intelligence with this kind of decision making. And in fact, it was Isaac Asimov, who was a famous science fiction writer, that actually thought about this and came up with some very simple rules. And he said there are 3 laws in robotics. Number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. That sounds pretty straightforward, right? Cannot harm a human being, right? Number two, a robot must obey the orders given to it by a human being, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. That is, harm a human being. And number three, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So that all seems to make sense, right? We don't want robots or artificial intelligence harming human beings. We want them to continue to pay attention to human beings and to obey orders unless it is to harm another human being, and also then as a final rule to protect its own existence. But it doesn't answer all the questions. Now, the trolley problem is something in ethics that came up in the 1960s and has been a way of elucidating ethical thought and ethical problems and how to think about these problems for quite a while. So what we see here is, imagine you're the switchman. Let me see if I can get my pointer here. You're the switchman right there, right? On this trolley line. So this is a trolley car, this is a trolley line, and you're the switchman. And the trolley can go straight or it can veer off to the left. There are 5 men that are working on the trolley line. They don't see the trolley coming, and the trolley is actually, the brakes have failed, and it's now out of control. Nothing can stop the trolley at this point. Nobody in the trolley car can stop the trolley. It's coming along these tracks, and there are 5 men working on it. They're unaware of the trolley, and before they can become aware of it, they would be killed. They can't step off of the track. And then there is, on the left, there is a single worker working on the trolley, working on the line, and you are the switch operator. So since the brakes have failed and the trolley car is out of control, it cannot stop. So you're faced with a dilemma. Do you allow the trolley car to continue straight and the 5 men on the track will be killed? Or do you divert the trolley car and only one person will be killed? And what will you do? How will you decide what the appropriate course of action is? Do you do nothing and let the trolley car go straight, kill 5 people? Or do you flip the switch, let the trolley car divert to the left and kill 1 person? So this highlights a number of different problems. But let's change the scenario. So, you may think, well, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I would maybe divert it so only 1 person is killed. But let's change the scenario a little bit. Let's say those 5 people that are on the line, these 5 people, they're all convicted felons of heinous crimes. And the 1 person crossing over here is no longer a worker, but has just recently won the Nobel Peace Prize. And now you are faced with a choice. Do you allow 5 heinous criminals to die, or do you allow somebody who has made great contributions to society to die? Right? These are questions. How do you program AI to analyze this problem and to make a split-second decision as to what to do? Now let's change the scenario just slightly. And we will, let's say you're not the switchman here, but rather you are an independent observer, and you've noticed that, and there's some very large person standing next to you, and you've noticed that this trolley car is out of control. And now you are faced with the same problem. Or do you let this trolley car go straight and kill 5 people, or do you actually push this large person over the bridge so he falls on the tracks and actually stops the trolley car, ended up saving all 6 people? So this is another ethical question, right? So when you're the trolley car operator, you're thinking about what is the lesser of the 2 evils, right? But up here, if you're on the bridge and you're thinking, well, I can sacrifice 1 person to save 6, but you are an active actor. You are actually committing murder to save those 6 people, right? So there are different nuances there. Unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world to discuss it, but I want to just bear this trolley problem in mind as we go through the rest of this. So how does this apply to AI? Well, we are talking about autonomous vehicles now. Tesla is working on an autonomous vehicle, so is Waymo and a couple other companies. The switchman now is actually AI. So what we have is we have a person who is a passenger in this vehicle. One person is a passenger in this vehicle. AI, it has to make a decision. There are 5 people that are crossing now. The autonomous vehicle is out of control. Now the AI must make a decision. Do I go straight and kill 5 people, or do I actually divert it and kill my one passenger and save the 5 people? I don't know how Tesla has been programmed, but this is a similar to the trolley experiment, right? And it also has other degrees of complexity that we have to think about. So these are ethical dilemmas. So what we can do is we can look at different schools of thought and say, well, okay, let's see what these schools of thought have to say and whether any of them can be applied to AI. On the one hand, we have relativism, we have utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue. These are ethical schools of thought. And then we have most postmodern. I'm not going to go into depth with these, but we also have postmodern school of thought. So what does cultural relativism say? Well, this particular ethical theory is put forward by Aristotle, Descartes, Immanuel Kant, and they say there's really no universal moral standards, but rather morality is defined by the norms of one's culture. So our sense of morality is different here in the United States than it is in North Korea, than it is in China, than it is in India, than it is in France. Our sense of morality differs depending on the culture that we live in. And so the decisions that we make must be made within that cultural framework. And so that means that we have a diversity of different moral standards depending on where we live and what society we live in. So we have a problem. We have a real difficulty being able to apply cultural relativism to AI because AI would not know what culture it was in order to apply those moral standards. And then it might actually be in some other situation where it's applying a moral standard of one culture to something else that then may actually justify it with an unethical practice. Let's say AI existed in the time of Hitler. Well, that culture was different, and that might justify some actions, not with cars, but with other weapons that would cause great harm to humanity. So perhaps cultural relativism really cannot be applied to AI. What about utilitarianism? This idea was put forward by John Stuart Mill, and this is Peter Singer here, who is a great proponent of utilitarianism. This is what you are aiming in your actions and ethical decision making to create the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And so everybody deserves equal consideration, and the morality of your actions is based on the outcome. So in the case where you're the switchman, you are trying to figure out what is the greatest good. Well, that's pretty easy, right? You don't want to kill 5 people. It's okay to kill 1 person. If you're up on the bridge and you push that person over and you actually actively kill that person off the bridge in order to save 6 people, well, in utilitarianism, that would be fine, right? You are looking at what is the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now, in order to do that, in order to program that into AI, we have to figure out what is the greatest good. What is human? How do you aggregate the greatest good? It's very easy in this trolley experiment, but maybe there's other things. And then there's the unintended consequences. How would it figure out, well, the person on the track is a Nobel Prize winner versus heinous criminals? Is that something that it could factor in as to what is the greatest good? So perhaps utilitarianism probably would not be the best ethical framework to program into AI. Deontology is rule-based, right? It doesn't care about the consequences. It says, thou shalt not kill. Therefore, who cares what the consequences are? You follow the rules, regardless of what the consequences is. And so, if we were to program deontology into AI systems, we would have a problem because then AI would not be able to figure out all the nuances as to, were they heinous criminals, which is a Nobel Prize winner, would not. It's a rule, and it would follow it regardless. And that could cause problems too. So perhaps this is not the best ethical framework to program into AI either. And then finally, we have virtue ethics. Now, this was actually put forward by Socrates, and they say, well, it's education. By educating ourselves, we develop things like wisdom. We understand courage. We understand justice. We understand temperance. And so initially, you may think, oh yeah, well, AI has all the information in the world, and therefore it would be the most educated. But also it becomes contextual, right? It's a nuanced contextual based upon your sense of justice and wisdom and your ability to understand the situation that you would apply different rules. There are no true rules. It's all very contextual. Again, it'd be very difficult to program AI to reflect virtue ethics because our culture is evolving, our understanding of our values are evolving, and it depends on new information and new moral examples. So it may be too context specific for AI to be able to pick up on that. So we're really stuck in a quandary as to how we're going to be able to program AI to act in an ethical and moral way. So postmodern ethics is basically, it rejects all these moral principles, and it says everything is relative, and ethics in itself is socially constructed, and therefore there's no real true objective moral truth. It's all based upon context, nuance, diversity of cultures. So it picks up on a couple of these other ethical schools of thought, and really we would not be able to say, okay, AI, you just define the context, you define the culture, you define what moral truth is. I think that would be very, very difficult to do. So we really don't have a good ethical school of thought that applies well to AI. So now we're at a situation, we do have some ethical foundational principles in medicine that we could apply and program AI. But again, we're faced with some difficulties. These are the 4 ethical principles that were enunciated by the Belmont Report. The idea of beneficence, that is, that you want to make sure that you are acting in the best interest of the patient. Autonomy, respecting the patient's right to determine what's to be done with his or her own body. Non-maleficence, that is, to cause no harm. And distributive justice, that is, to create fair and equitable access to healthcare resources. So let's look at autonomy, right? So in autonomy is informed consent. So the patient has to know, if we're using AI, they have to know what the pluses and minuses, the pros and cons of using AI, and how AI is making the decisions that they can do. In order to get that information, then we as physicians and dentists must know exactly how the AI is making its decisions. So if we send them down to radiology to have AI take a look for that spot, what are the pluses and minuses of that? What is the error rate? What is the probability that they're going to get wrong? What's the probability that they're going to confabulate? So that's a problem. Data security, right? Part of patient autonomy is having their own records being kept confidential. But then how can you share their records with AI without AI adopting those records as its own to use as part of that database, right? If they're looking at a database of 10,000 or 100,000 scans, they need to get that from someplace. So every time you enter data, it will learn from that data, and therefore what happens to patient confidentiality and data security. And then transparency and education. This is a real problem. Transparency, that is, how was this program created, and what can we, and what information, what input did it have, and what are the outputs, and who programmed it, and what sort of biases were there, right? So we have to know that, and all these different programs are all proprietary. So how do we get that information to have that degree of transparency? Okay, let's look at beneficence. To do good whenever we can. And this is where it's very positive, right? We can show that this does improve patient outcomes. When a computer can look at 10,000 different scans, certainly, and do that in a fraction or 2 or 3 seconds, where it would take us a lifetime to look at, certainly we can improve patient outcomes. But on the other hand, as it was mentioned multiple times, garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting in incorrect data or faulty data, then you're going to get faulty conclusions as well. And certainly enhancing efficiency. Certainly this program that can write the SOAP note, sure, it's going to make things much more efficient, and allow us to spend more time with our patients. So I think that's a good thing. And then also personalized medicine. You enter genetic code in there, you enter other things, disease process, family history, and you can actually develop a personalized approach to your patient. So that's all very, very good. Non-maleficence, avoiding harm to your patient. Can we do that? That's the question. Again, that goes back to transparency. And what about bias? Bias, I think, is a big, big problem. It's also been mentioned a couple of times because bias, right? And we have bias and we have unconscious bias. And the way that we program the AI and the data that we put in all has biases. And so how do we make sure that it is fair and equitable, right? So we program it. We have a study that was only done on European American men, or a study that was done only on, and then that data is being applied to children or other ethnic groups. It could be biased, right? And so we really have to be very careful about that. And then also ensuring reliability. We've had multiple instances now with ChatGPT actually just confabulating things, just made it up. You ask them a question, they made it up and give you the citations. You try and find the citations, nowhere to be found. How can we make sure these systems are reliable and safe for our patients? And then this idea of justice, right? Equitable access to healthcare resources. AI is very expensive. Hospitals will have to invest millions of dollars into AI resources. And then will that create a 2-tier or 3-tier system where only the people that can afford health insurance will have access to AI and everybody else doesn't? So we really have to address those disparities and also really study how we're going to allocate these resources in a way that's equitable and fair. So we promote equitable distribution of resources. Okay, and so we have a lot of thinking to do about this. We have to find a framework that we can apply to AI to make ethical types of decisions that involve people's lives and in a way that we can trust that they will act in our best interests. And that will require a lot of oversight, it will require transparency, and it will require a lot of thinking about this. Thank you very much.